The desert is revealing its secrets. For centuries, Saudi Arabia's scorching heat has held a mystery buried under layers of sand, time, and silence. As everyone looked to Egypt, to the traditional Mount Sinai in the Sinai Peninsula, few noticed that Moses was never there during his exile. He fled Egypt and went to live in Midian, and Midian, according to ancient and modern sources, has always been in northwestern Saudi Arabia. There is not a single archaeological evidence of Midian in that Egyptian region where they placed the tourist Sinai. And now, the sand is beginning to give way. Something was found. Something big. A body of evidence that is shaking the scientific community, causing discomfort in historians, and even making religious skeptics rethink their certainties. There are ruins, inscriptions, burnt structures, and physical signs that exactly match the details described in the book of Exodus. The mountain, the altar, the cloven recall, in the place where, until recently, no one paid attention. What was supposed to be just a dry, forgotten and lifeless region became the stage for a possible spiritual and historical revolution. Atheists and secular scholars, who arrived without faith and without a Bible in hand, returned with more questions than answers. How to explain such precision in the biblical accounts? How can we deny what the drones, soil samples, and satellite images themselves are revealing? Biblical archaeology has never been so uncomfortable and so fascinating. What if I told you that there are scientists panicking about what they found there? That even the proudest skeptics are avoiding commenting publicly? That's exactly why you need to watch this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and get ready to see with your own eyes the discoveries that can change everything you have always believed or stopped believing in. Who would have imagined that Saudi Arabia, with its scorching dunes and empty horizons, would keep under the millennial silence of the desert a revelation that could shake history? Few paid attention to what lay beneath the sand. But now, signs are beginning to sprout like roots that no one expected to see flourish. Moses may have left more than footprints in his wake, and the Exodus, so often doubted by skeptics, seems to be unfolding again, not in the pages of the Bible, but in the dry ground that is now beginning to scream. Imagine walking through a place where every stone seems to tell a secret. That's exactly what some researchers are beginning to realize as they scour this forgotten land. Biblical archaeology, which for decades has focused between Egypt and Israel, now turns its eyes to a little explored point, and it is precisely there, near the mysterious Jebel al, that the most daring clues of the journey of the Hebrew people appear. Coincidence? Perhaps, but as a wise old man would say, when the dust rises out of nowhere, it is because something moves underneath. Ron Wyatt, a name that many treat with disdain and others with reverence, was one of the first to say that there was something there. Today, even those who used to mock his statements are starting to adjust their glasses. The recent discoveries, without fanfare, without fuss, have been made by scientists who did not even have any religious motivation. That changes everything. When atheists find evidence of the Exodus and are speechless, perhaps it is time for us to listen more carefully to what the desert is trying to whisper. And we're not talking about small stones or isolated artifacts. We are talking about structures, formations, physical marks, as if the earth itself were echoing the story of Moses. The curious thing is that all this seems to be happening at a discrete pace, almost as if it were protected by a greater purpose. But if there's silence now, get ready, because the noise will come when we realize what this desert really hides, and it is precisely there where Moses stepped that biblical geography will begin to be redrawn. Midian was always a name mentioned in passing, almost as a background in the story of Moses. But now, the map is starting to shake. What was once just a geographical detail gains prominence, especially when we discover that this land is in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, and not where many have always pointed out. It's not just a question of coordinates. It is a paradigm shift, because if Moses really lived there, then the Exodus took another path, and Mount Sinai is no longer where tourism says it is. Moses' flight to this land was not only a route of survival, but a prophetic step. It was there that he found the fire that was not consumed, and burning that man's heart was just the beginning. Many wonder, why was the Bible so specific in mentioning Midian? And why hasn't anyone paid attention to it before? This is where modern biblical archaeology comes in, which is slowly beginning to treat the Arabian desert as a living archive, waiting for attentive readers. It is no coincidence that Jebel Alaz is in this same region. The imposing mountain, dark at the top, seems to observe the world with the patience of someone who knows that his time to speak is near. Moses, according to the records, spent years in Midian before returning to Egypt. He not only pastored there, but also built a family, and that changes everything. It is as if God had prepared that particular setting, like a natural studio, for the recording of one of the most intense episodes in sacred history. While many are still stuck in the Egyptian Sinai tradition, a new scene rises from the dust, literally. The landscape of Saudi Arabia fits with the details narrated in Exodus, as if each summit and each valley had been shaped to receive that story. And the more one observes, the more impossible it becomes to ignore. It is at this point that even the most skeptical begin to scratch their heads. And that brings us right to a group of people who never expected to find something so powerful, and that they ended up finding unintentionally. They were not seeking God. In fact, many did not even like to hear this name. They were researchers, geologists, soil and ancient history specialists, driven only by data and evidence. No Bible in the backpack, no verse on the tip of the tongue. But what they found in the Saudi Arabian desert right there, near the Jebel Alaz, was so stark, so in line with the Exodus account, that even their skepticism could not silence reality. How to explain the coincidence of so much biblical evidence in a place that has never been on the maps of religious tradition? The impact was so strong that some simply disappeared from the debates. One of them, known in academia for harshly criticizing any biblical argument, was silent at a conference, literally mute. There was no alternative theory that could account for all the physical marks found there. Boundaries of stones around a burnt mountain, remains of a possible altar, rock inscriptions with figures of calves. They weren't trying to prove anything, and even so, they proved it. Ron Wyatt had been ridiculed for decades, but now the discoveries made by secular scientists seem to follow in the wake he traced. It is as if time has winked ironically, throwing in the face of science what it has always wanted to avoid, that perhaps the Bible is not only a book of faith, but also a book of history. This does not mean that everyone has converted, but that many have begun to revise their assumptions. And let's face it, when atheists are disconcerted by biblical archaeology, it is because the soil is really speaking louder than the theories. This type of situation makes us reflect. How many other truths are hidden under the dust of unbelief? Moses' own journey, the Exodus, the miracles in the desert, all this that seemed like a legend, begins to gain contour, in fact. And this brings us to a specific mountain, which for decades has been pointed out as the real Mount Sinai, and which now, with the new discoveries, gains even more strength in the narrative. The Jebel Alaz rises on the horizon like a sentinel forgotten by time. Its fire-darkened top contrasts with the clear skies of Saudi Arabia, as if it had witnessed something sacred and had been marked by it. Many claim that this would be the real Mount Sinai. And when you look closer, the question changes tone. It's no longer is it, but why didn't anyone tell us this before? Biblical archaeology has an entire scenario they're waiting to be Moses, as described in Exodus, would have climbed a burning mountain. And guess which one has clear signs of having been burned at the top? But it's not just fire. It's the environment. It is the stones arranged around it, the natural boundaries that recall the instructions given by God to the Hebrew people. They are the altar marks, the inscriptions and the sacred atmosphere that emanates from the place. And who pointed out this mountain before everyone else? Ron Wyatt. Of course. Ridiculed by many, he visited Jebel Alaz in the 1980s and said firmly, "It's here." Today, Even secular scholars acknowledge that the characteristics match the text of Exodus. It's not guesswork. It is a comparison of facts. This mound has been kept away from prying eyes for decades. Saudi Arabia itself restricts access to the area. Coincidence? Maybe not. There are records of fences, surveillance, and even direct bans on visitation. It's as if someone knows what it represents, wants to keep that secret buried a little longer, but you can no longer hide what jumps out at you. Jebel al-Olos is an enigma that fits neatly into the biblical narrative, as a piece that should never have been displaced. And as much as skeptics try to look away, each new piece of evidence pushes them back into that mound. There is a silent force there, almost as if the earth itself is wanting to tell the truth. A truth that involves not only Moses and the Exodus, but also something that was built, or rather molded, at the foot of this mountain, a symbol of rebellion, idolatry. And that to this day provokes heated debates at the foot of the Jebel al-Olos, among rock formations and traces of ancient walls. Carved figures of calves have been found. They are not modern scribbles or Bedouin graffiti. They are old engravings with clear and significant traces. The curious thing, right there, in the vicinity of this burnt mountain, the Bible reports that Moses' people built a golden calf and danced around it. Exodus 32 takes on a new tone when we are in front of these images. Biblical archaeology, in this case, seems to have captured an echo of the most serious sin of that generation. These discoveries call into question centuries of religious maps. Altar with burnt black stones, surrounded by natural boundaries, and with animal inscriptions that coincide with the symbol of the calf. It's not just symbolic, it's physical. And those who were there say that the energy of the place is heavy, dense. Many researchers report discomfort and even nightmares after visiting the site. Coincidence? Perhaps. Or perhaps there is still a real spiritual weight where there has been so much idolatry. Ron Wyatt was again one step ahead. He identified these signs in the 1980s and suggested that this was the altar of the golden calf. At the time, the idea sounded like fiction, and many treated him as a lunatic adventurer. Today, however, the images and analyses made by other archaeologists, including skeptics, reinforce the hypothesis. It is as if the narrative of the Exodus had been engraved not only on the heart of Moses, but also on the stones of that cursed place. But what draws the most attention is not the fact that these ruins exist. That's what they mean: idolatry in the middle of the desert, in the shadow of the sacred mountain. A betrayal that, even today, echoes as a warning. After all, how many modern golden calves do people build? How many times do miracles be exchanged for fleeting distractions? And when you look at the stones around the Jebel al-Olos, you can't help but wonder, what else is there, waiting to be revealed? The narrative of the Exodus is marked by powerful elements of nature: fire, cracked rocks, and water springing up in the And the most impressive thing is that these elements seem to have left visible traces in the Jebel al-Olos region. There is a specific rock, broken vertically in half, with marks of water erosion at the base, located in the middle of the desert. Does it seem impossible? But there it is, lonely, as if it had been literally wounded, just as the text of Exodus 17 describes, when Moses struck the rock to gush water to the thirsty people. In addition, the mountain's burned slopes continue to generate debate. Analysis shows that the darkening is not caused by lava or volcanic activity, but by intense exposure to heat, something that harkens back to the supernatural fire that God manifested before Moses at Sinai. There is no other mountain with this profile in the region. The setting there is not only compatible with the Bible, it is as if it had been prepared for it. Biblical archaeology finds, at this point, an almost poetic synchrony between the text and the terrain. Interestingly, there are also circular marks, made with stones in areas near the base of the hill, as if someone had delimited a sacred zone. According to Exodus 19, God instructed that limits be established so that the people would not exceed during the divine manifestation. These stones are there to this day, discreet but firm. Those who visit the place report a strange, almost reverent feeling. Even the most skeptical admit it. It's hard to ignore the precision of the details. These physical signs seem to form a silent trail, as if the earth itself had recorded the footsteps of Moses' people. An altar, a rock, a mountain on fire. None of this was invented, it's there, waiting for eyes that want to see. And it is precisely when this evidence accumulates that the silence begins to bother. Especially among those who have always denied the veracity of these stories. They arrived with cameras, drones, and scientific equipment. No Bible, no prayer, only curiosity and thirst for evidence. But what was supposed to be another ordinary expedition turned into a silent confrontation between reason and something that no one could explain. When the researchers came across the ruins, the signs of the Exodus, and the burnt mountain, skepticism began to waver. Some have changed their stance. Others simply disappeared from the media. It's strange to see people used to talking all the time. Suddenly, he is silent. There are reports of researchers who asked for their names to be removed from publications. Others avoided interviews, not because there was a lack of evidence, but because the evidence seemed to say something they didn't want to hear. Imagine spending your life claiming that Moses is a myth and suddenly finding the exact elements described in the book of Exodus in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert. It's the kind of thing that turns the world upside down. Even skeptics have a limit to comfortable silence. Ron Wyatt suffered 4 years from the label of quack. But now, the same institutions that mocked his expeditions are in internal conflict. How to deal with discoveries that confirm not only an ancient narrative, but also the place where it happened. Biblical archaeology has never been a science that pleased everyone. But when even those who do not believe begin to retreat, something is very out of place. And that's exactly what's happening now. Perhaps it is time to reflect. If even those who do not believe are silent in the face of the evidence, what prevents the rest of the world from opening its eyes? The findings are no longer guesses. They are documented, recorded, mapped, and with each new layer of sand that moves in the desert, a part of the Bible seems to take shape. And if all this is really true, what are the consequences? After all, if Mount Sinai is in the wrong place on maps, what else is wrong in the world? The stones are screaming, and it's not a metaphor. With each excavation, with each satellite analysis, the evidence grows that the real Mount Sinai is not where the tourist maps point, but in the middle of Saudi Arabia. That changes everything. Biblical archaeology now challenges not only traditional geography, but also religious, academic, and even political institutions. What was once just faith now finds support in satellite images, soil samples, and reports from scientists who have never set foot in a church. And when the earth confirms what was written millennia ago, the debate changes tone. It's no longer about believing or not, but about what to do with this new knowledge. Ron Wyatt may not be alive to see it anymore, but his legacy today bothers even the most well-meaning scholars. If Jebel al-Ulos is really Sinai, the golden calf was raised there, and Moses climbed that mountain, then the Bible is not just a book of fate, it is a historical record of a real people in a real place. The implications are numerous. Religious tourism can migrate to Saudi Arabia. Territorial disputes and geopolitical interests can emerge around a sacred site not officially recognized. And, more important, millions of people around the world can begin to look at the Bible with different eyes, not as a symbolic manual, but as a narrative grounded in reality. Even the skeptics, so confident, now need to rethink their certainties. The truth is springing from the earth, as Psalm 85:11 said, and this sprouting does not come with shouts, but with solid evidence. The silence of the desert is no longer the same. It now echoes with the story of Moses, with the sound of water gushing from a broken rock, and with the memory of the people who danced around the golden calf. But that's not the end of the story. Quite the opposite. It's the point where everything starts to fall into place in a disturbing way. Now, tell me, what if all this is really true? What if Mount Sinai has always been in Saudi Arabia, and you've spent your whole life looking at the wrong place? How many other truths are buried, waiting only for someone with courage to dig? What are you going to do with this knowledge? Ignore how many are doing, or investigate further and let your faith, or even your doubt, be confronted with facts. The silence of the skeptics says a lot. What about you? Will you continue in silence too? Is the world ready to accept that the Bible, so often ridiculed, may be confirmed stone by stone? The question that remains is, how far are you willing to go to find out the truth? You're hungry for answers ... or fear of what you might find? Comment below. What surprised you the most? Have you ever heard of Jebel al? What is your opinion about the findings and the silence of the media? Let's talk in the comments. This space is yours too. And of course, say if this content made you think, generated that good restlessness. Subscribe now to the channel and activate the bell. Because what lies ahead, it will mess with everything you believe in even more. The desert is just beginning to speak, and you'll want to be here to hear every word.